And it is 10 a.m. Eastern Time, so that must mean it's time for our next session. Hello, everyone. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Steve Teresi. I'm the Director of Training and Technical Services with JL Audio. I'm located down in sunny southern South Florida, just a little bit north of the Miramar factory, where JL Audio's headquarters is. I have with me Mr. Rob Haynes in Southern California. Say hello, Rob.
Hello, everyone.
Fantastic. And then up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I have Mr. Kevin Ferry, who will be leading our session today. Say hello, Kevin.
Hello, everybody.
Fantastic. Just a quick reminder on how this goes down. These trainings are specifically designed to last about 30 to 45 minutes, very focused presentations intended to take advantage of the limited time that many people may have during the day to attend such sessions. There are two venues to watch. One is in our WebEx channel, which right now, if you are in there, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should have a chat window. If you don't, across the bottom edge of your video screen, you'll see a little button that looks like a messenger button. Click on that, and you'll see the chat window. You can pop questions in there. Rob and I will be minding that chat area and responding to those questions as we can. Kevin will be presenting, so he will not be able to see those comments until some point later on. So if you need us to get his attention, direct your questions to the entire channel or to Rob or myself. And if you're watching on Facebook, we'll also be keeping an eye out on any chatter that may be taking place there. Understand there's a bit of a delay between our live portion and what shows up on Facebook, so we'll give it a couple of seconds here and there if there's any interaction that's necessary, and we'll get to you as quickly as we can. And thank you so much for being there on Facebook. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the ball over to Mr. Kevin Ferry. Kevin, take it away.
Alrighty, thank you, Steve. I'm gonna share my screen here, and you guys should start being able to see our Tune software. I want to welcome everybody to session 106. This is a walkthrough for Tune software. This is a little bit different than our other sessions that we've done because it is completely live and real time walking through the software, so keep that in mind. If my fingers get a little fast and I get a typo here or there, please forgive me. I'm excited to walk you guys through all of this stuff, so just be mindful of my fast finger mistakes. And also just another reminder that this is a walkthrough on how to navigate the software and kind of where things are, and just being familiar with the different panels and panes on the actual software itself, and being able to get you started and up and running. The processes like using EQ, setting input sensitivity, and general tuning will actually be covered in the sessions coming up, 201A, 201B, and even going into 301 also. So our sessions coming up will cover a lot of the processes of doing your input sensitivity and all of that. So on that note, let's get started. I've already opened TuneUp, as you guys can see here, and using simulation mode with a VX808i on a new project. So a lot of us here hit cancel down at the bottom, and I'm gonna say let's not do that on a normal basis. Two guys put together this thing that's called Tune Setup Tool, and we put a lot of work into that. I won't mention who those two guys are, but they're pretty smart in their own minds, at least. So we put a lot of work in the setup tool to really make it easier to go through and do that. But for the sake of things, I actually want to walk through and take the time to walk through and show you how to do a complete setup manually. So we're going to start off by hitting cancel. Again, when you're doing this, you probably don't want to hit cancel. You want to walk through that. But for this sake, we did hit cancel there. I feel even a little weird just hitting the cancel button at that point in time too. So,
Guys, please don't click that cancel button. I know Kevin's going to show us how to set the amplifier up, but the majority of tickets that come into tech support or issues, we hear from reps about VX products not functioning properly or not sounding right. 95% of the time, if that setup tool was used instead of someone clicking cancel and trying to do it themselves, those problems would have never happened. They would have all been corrected by the setup tool, which will properly set up your files and have you really give you a system that functions properly. And if you don't like it, whatever. Kevin's going to show you later how we can make changes to what the setup tool is going to do. But please use it because it guarantees a foolproof working system right off the bat. And ring.
Right. So what Kevin's going to actually do for us is, I call it peeling back the curtain a little bit to see what's going on. So Rob's 100% right. You should use the setup tool. It's there to save you a ton of time and really streamline and make sure it's error-free. What Kevin's going to do is show you what the setup tool is ultimately going to do for you and why it's such a powerful tool in the first place. And none of this stuff is etched in stone, guys. You can change any of the things that either the setup tool or what Kevin's going to show you, which is essentially the same thing. You can change any of it at any time. It's very, very easy. All right, Kevin, we're done. Keep going.
All right, so I just want to give a layout of the screen here, coming down on the left side of things. Let me get a full screen here for you guys. So coming down on the left side, our first thing is new project. Say I had already opened something up and I did some changes on there and I wanted to start a new project from scratch. I would actually click this little plus sign here on that left-hand side. Our next one down is save or open project. So open project opens an existing file that I've already created, I've already saved. So maybe I've done an F-150 and I've already laid everything out. I got another F-150 coming into the shop. I open the old project and I'm able to use that to go through and get my starting points for everything. So I can open those current projects and do some minor tweaking to them and then use them onto the next vehicle. Our next one, our next button down there is our save project. So save project will save the current project that you are working on. Now, there are settings on here that actually give you a built-in save that goes in every 5 minutes and does it as 3-time redundancy. So every 15 minutes, you'll get a new 3 new saved files on there. However,
Wait. Are you telling me that it automatically saves my project so I don't have to freak out if something happens?
It does, and it automatically saves it with 3 redundancies too. So you get so you get some saving grace there, so you don't have to worry about it. However, if you are making a lot of detailed changes, or say you're done and you've wrapped up your project, definitely save the file before you close out. If you do try to close out without saving it, you'll have one more redundancy that will say, hey, you're closing out, you haven't saved the project on this latest file, do you want to save that? And then you'd click yes there. However, just save it randomly every once in a while. It will help you out, especially if you're doing a lot of in-depth tuning within the last 5 minutes. Because remember, if something did happen, you may lose 2.5, 3 minutes, right? So make sure that you go through and use this save.
Losing 2.5 to 3 hours.
It is way better than using 2.5 to 3 hours for sure. Now, the next one is very important too. Transfer project to device or transfer project to VXI. I'm using, like I said earlier, an 808 to do this VX808i to do this demonstration. So it does come up and say transfer to VXI. If we're using an MVI, it would say the same thing. The amplifiers have kind of 2 sets of memories on them. One, as you're going through and we're making all of these changes on here, everything is real time and live. Now, it does have a non-volatile memory that you have to transfer to device. So we have to click this button here, and it will transfer our project to that non-volatile memory. So that way, when the customer turns off, or you go out to your car, you turn your car off, turn it back on, your project is still saved on there. Now, as we go through and do things, you'll notice that this button will highlight, which reminds us, hey, you got to go through and you got to transfer to the device because some changes have been made. So just keep that in mind. It is a very, very important process to do.
You make the button bigger and have like a giant neon arrow pointing to it at all times whenever there's a change made. Rob had mentioned about 95% of the tech support tickets we get are related to people not using the setup tool. The remaining 5% are usually because they didn't hit the transfer to device button. And what happens is you go through a tuning session and you get everything dialed in. You think you're done, you disconnect and you walk away and everything sounds great until you cycle the key on the car or the boat and the amp turns off. And then it goes back to whatever the previous permanently stored state was. So what Kevin just said, make sure you look at that button and hit it before you make any disconnection. Now, the good news is the project file is saved on your computer and it's temporarily saved on the amplifier. So even if you did disconnect without transferring it, you could still save the work you've done because it's on your computer. And if you reconnect the amplifier to the computer, you can resume where you left off. So again, it's only an issue if the vehicle leaves or the vessel goes away and now the computer is in a different location. And even that's only a temporary problem, because once the computer is back with the vessel or the vehicle, you can then load that project file back on. So again, there's a lot of redundancy and backup plans that are built into the software and the way the mechanisms all work, but you could avoid a lot of that by making sure you click that button. Sorry, Kevin, I owe you a minute and a half.
That's okay. That's okay. We're skimmed down today, so we're good. All right, the next one down is settings. I'm going to actually click this one because there's a couple cool things that I do want to show on this. This kind of will be where you pull up anything that, or any notes that you've typed in, make, model, the vehicle, if you've put any descriptions in there or notes in there. Keep in mind, anybody can pull up and see these notes if they are plugged into the amplifier. So just watch if you are using this in a shop, what you put in there, because the customer may be able to go in and see that. And then if you are an end user and you're using this, just make sure you don't put anything that you don't want anybody else to see on there. So just keep that in mind. But there's a couple real cool things on here. Power on delay, which is nice, and the remote output delay. So these two things, if you get, I know F-150s, 350s, kind of the newer vehicles, if you're using OEM integration device, sometimes you get a little turn on pop, just the way that the signal's routed and all of that. So we can actually delay these just a second. You won't really notice it or anything like that, but that second will give you the time to not have that turn on pop happening. So it's just a nice little feature that's on there. The other cool thing is your badge illumination. We can change the badge illumination of the amplifier to the preset color, and it will switch through what any of our presets are. So if we have a red preset on, the badge will illuminate red. If we have a yellow preset on there, it'll illuminate yellow, white, white. So it goes along that. We can also configure it and select a color that matches kind of the interior of the vehicle or the theme of the vehicle that's going on too. So, and we can change the brightness intensity on there also. So just kind of a couple cool features that are in the settings application there.
Just for clarity, that's changing the brightness of the badge illumination. Unfortunately for the Drc 400, this does not function. We know that thing is incredibly bright. I always thought the preset color option was one of the cooler features of that, that you just covered, until I realized that in most cases you never see the amplifiers once they're installed, certainly not from the front of the vehicle or the boat, right? So yeah, it's still cool, but I like picking a color that maybe matches the theme of the installation instead. So that's my preferred method.
Same. It's honestly, that's my preferred one there too. So I like to just pick a color that kind of matches the interior, and then that way it just looks, it just looks nice in that surroundings there. Alrighty, so we're gonna cruise down to a couple different buttons down here. We have our select, rename device, and then we have our restore project here. Not going to get too in depth with those two, but I do want to jump down here to preferences. Preferences is pretty cool. So we said we get our backups, and we can go in there and we can change the timing of our backups or how many backup versions we have. So remember I said that we've get every 5 minutes you get a backup, and it will back up 3 times redundant. So we have those settings to be able to go through and change that. If you want to change it to every 2 minutes or 5 backups, you can go through and do that. Also, there's just a couple different options in here that may be visually more appealing to you. The one thing that I like is we can change it from high contrast to standard. So we'll see these going through the different tuning sections. High contrast is nice. It's bright. It's very, very clean. So if you're out on outside or out on the water in a vessel, or maybe you're just tuning a car out back of the shop, you can go through and utilize that high contrast. Since I don't want to burn out everybody's retinas while we're doing this, I'm going to switch back to the normal sides there.
When we're sitting in the office, when we put on the high contrast mode, just like I said, it kind of burns your eyes a little bit. But I got to tell you, you're sitting on a boat or sitting at a dock somewhere that you need to tune a vessel like that. Ooh, wow, what a difference it makes. What a great job we have. I spent about 2 hours working outside, sitting in a chair on my laptop, just testing the high contrast mode, or at least that's what I told everybody.
Another important feature on that screen that Kevin just showed us, you can also determine where you're saving your project files. So if you're a retailer that has multiple locations and you want to be able to share your files, maybe you change that location on that preferences page from the default documents folder on a computer to a folder on iCloud or Dropbox. That way everyone, no matter where they are, has access to those project files, which is pretty cool.
And even if you're not a retailer, back it up to the cloud. If your computer dies, I mean, you can pull the file from the hardware itself, so you can pull the file from the amplifier itself if you need to, but just in case, back it up on the cloud if your computer dies or something happens. Maybe you're out tuning on your boat and you accidentally drop your laptop in the water or something like that. Back up to the cloud. So always back up to the cloud. Alrighty, so let's get into our project here. So I'm going to start by naming my inputs, and we're just on our standard setup tab here. And I'm going to come over and I am going to name this as left input. Now, I'm going to say this is set in stone. It's not really set in stone, but it is set in stone. Put lefts up top and rights underneath. So start with your left and then move down to your right. Oh.
Just for the record, if you're dealing with a boat, it's still left and right. Don't go in with the port and starboard because they're marine terms. This is audio, okay? We're dealing with audio. We use left and right. And it is written in stone. At least my boss tells me that, left and right. But as Kevin is demonstrating, the software doesn't know what you're actually putting in there. So, I mean, as an exception, as a very big exception to a very strong rule, you can change it if you have to.
So like we said, it's set in stone, but not set in stone, but set in stone. So when we come to our outputs, I want to start again, keep the lefts up top and then the rights underneath. So we're going to go left, right, left, right, left, right. And we're going to start from the smallest speaker and work our way down. The nice thing is that the colors on the outputs of the amplifiers also kind of coincide with this when you look at the harness for the outputs of the amplifier too. So it's going to help you both on setting everything up and keeping everything very efficient, but also on the actual hard install side of things. It'll very much help you out too. So I'm going to start and start up front and then work our way back. I'm just going to do a three-way system here on this 808. So I'm going to keep everything up front. So I'm going to say our front left tweeter. Oops. Front left tweeter, enter. Front right tweeter, enter. And then since it's a three-way, we have our front left mid-range, front right mid-range. And I'm going to come in. I'm going to actually bridge these two outputs in a second here just to show you how to do that. So we have our bridged boxes here. We'll just click each box. Now the back four channels are combined into two really powerful channels that we can run our mid-bass drivers on and get about twice the power out there. So we can bridge those and then I will go in and name those from there. Front, left, mid-bass, and our front, right, mid-bass. All right, so now we have our inputs labeled and we have our outputs labeled. Now the nice thing is as we walk through this router, you'll notice we get these kind of ghost lines going on there between the different lines and inputs and outputs. So I'm going to go ahead and click up here in the upper left-hand corner and start routing my signal. So my signal starts coming from my left input and right inputs and comes down through our equalizers. Now we have just 1 and 2 equalizers being used. We can use this linking icon to link those, but we also have multiple other EQs available. We have actually 10 available EQs, 8 on the outputs of the amplifier, and then 2 on the pre-outs of the amplifier. But for our instances here, we're going to keep it easy. We're going to use a left and right EQ only. So now the only thing I got to do is come down and connect the dots to our outputs.
Kevin?
Yes.
So a friend of mine was sharing with me a really interesting thought about what you just showed. You kind of showed the ghost lines and then you clicked on the little plus signs to route the signal. You can kind of look at that as virtual wires. So you connected RCA connections from the left and right input and you plugged them into the left and right input to an EQ. And now from the EQ, you're going to go from the EQ to each one of the crossovers, an external crossover. So if you kind of think of each one of these parts as a physical items, these are virtual wires going between each one of these items, the inputs, the EQs, the crossovers, the DRC, and then the outputs. These virtual wires are represented by the lines. So that may help as people get used to the software, thinking about it as virtual wires as a fill-in for the actual things, real wires.
Absolutely. So we take a look. This virtual wire comes from our left input, comes down through our EQ, and goes to all of our left output devices. So it goes right through and goes right to our lefts, and our rights go to our rights. So as you can see how nice and clean this looks, this is why we want to keep it lefts up top, rights, and then start with our smaller speakers and work our way down. So it just keeps everything nice and organized and very clean and able to look and visualize where all of that signal routing is going.
Before you click any further, there's been a lot of chatter back and forth on both WebEx and Facebook about the comment regarding left and right, port and starboard and all that. In all seriousness, you can do whatever you'd like, but we found it much easier when you're dealing with an audio signal to just keep it with left and right, because that's how the audio signal is going to come. It's going to be a left and right signal, just like you've named it here. Now on the outputs, since you might be sending that to like the bow of a boat or something along those lines, you can use the terms appropriate for marine applications on the outputs, because that helps the user identify where those wires are going to route to. But I would still follow a very strict convention of left, then right, or port and starboard, if you wanted to do that for the marine terms on the output, and high frequencies on top and lower frequencies on the bottom in multi-way systems. And if you're dealing with a vessel, I start with the bow up front, on the top, and then work my way through the vessel as I go through. Those rules on the outputs are a little bit more freewheeling. Stick with left and right convention, left and right, left and right. But how you do it otherwise is really up to you. The most important thing is that you stick to a convention that you understand, so that when you go back to it, you could fix it. And I would recommend making it so obvious that if anybody went back to it, they say, I know exactly what's going on. And Carlos is minding our Facebook chat as well, and he's in charge of our tech support department, and he's applauding a lot of these things right now, because he deals with the fallout of people. Don't label it, because if it just says output A, output B, output C, we have no idea what it's supposed to do, so we can't help. So, all right, stepping off soapbox, I owe you another minute and a half.
Yeah, the nice thing is that we can, or you guys can send these files into our tech support team, and if they're really labeled easily, then the tech support team can walk through very easily and help troubleshoot any issues that may have happened when you're routing signal or routing through EQs or anything like that. So it makes it very, very simple on both ends if these are all labeled very simply. Alrighty, so this is routing through our crossover, and we'll get into those here in a second. The next one is our DRC, and we can go through on our preamp outputs, which will actually run signal 2 here. So we got our preamp outputs, and we're going to run these to a subwoofer amplifier. So we'll just say sub amplifier left. All right. Now for our DRC setup, we have our master volume control and we have our sub volume control set up here. So we want to go through and click these two boxes so that way the sub level goes up with the master volume, but also is independently controlled with the sub volume control. Now you can go in there and change these up if you want to. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do a volume with a fader. So if you still want to retain the fading capabilities in the vehicle, you can go through and do that. If it is on a vessel, you have your zone volume controls capabilities on there also. So there are a couple different ways that you can go in and set your DRC up. So just depending on the application that you're doing. So we have our bridged, we showed that earlier. We have our outputs. Real quick here, over on the right-hand side of the screen, we have our DRC controls right here. When you do connect to Tune software, your DRC in the vehicle is no longer used. All of your controls for your DRC are done on the software itself. So that way, if you're outside of the vehicle or anything like that, you don't have to worry about opening the door up, grabbing the knob, and making adjustments. You can do it all from here. And we've talked about this in the earlier sessions, but make sure that you turn your DRC down at least probably about 50% before you connect to the software. Then coming down, we have our master mute here. We can click that off and you can see now I have green lights on the outputs, which are sending outputs to your output devices, to your speakers and all of that. We can hit the mute, everything's gray, there is no output going there, but we'll leave that on there. Real quick, you see up here in the top left-hand corner, before I switch screens, we have a highlighted box here next to inputs. We want to select this, and this is where we would actually set our input sensitivity. I'm not going to walk through the entire process for you, but we will be doing that tomorrow or coming up in the next sessions for 201. There are a couple different options in here also. You have for your remote turn on, DC offset, signal sensing capabilities. You do have to have a hardwired remote turn on to get the amplifier fired up the first time, but then you can come into your software and check DC offset or signal sensing and then take off that little jumper wire that you used to get the amplifier to fire up at the first time. And then you can come in and select. Again, we'll walk through and show you guys how to set the input sensitivity in sessions 201 and 201A and 201B. So over here, we have a couple other panels. I'm going to click on our Tune panel and go over to our Tune screen. When we take a look at our Tune screen, the first thing that you notice is our equalizers. We can come through and we can pick between the equalizers that we used, whether it's EQ1 or EQ2 or our pre-out EQ that we have our pre-out outputs going through. Up in the top right-hand corner, we can select between our graphic EQ and our parametric EQ. And we can also change it. If this is a little bit too, maybe your screen's a little bit smaller, you can select one large EQ to be able to walk through and select at that point in time. And it is a parametric EQ, so you can go in, you can change your frequency, you can change your Q, and you can change your gain, which again, we'll walk through and go through all of that stuff when we get into the tuning process. But just showing you, I can grab this, I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard to go through and make changes on there, and I can change my Q. But again, we'll go through it and show you guys that later. Just some quick tidbits real quick. I can select multiples and be able to do that just by using my mouse there and make changes that way. Also, you can grab one here and hit your command button and grab one up here and be able to control both EQ and EQ2. So just some quick shortcuts to show you that. But again, we'll get deep into the EQ panel in some of our later sessions. So when we step down here, our crossovers, we need to go through and set our high pass and low pass filters. Right now, we're actually running full range through our tweeter. So we want to make sure we go through and we set these up. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to set this at 5,000 Hertz. And you'll notice that over here, your little passband indicator shows that it is only playing the higher frequencies. So we'll come down to our mid-range. We'll select 24 dB Linkwitz-Riley. We'll set these starting at 400 Hertz. And we will come over here. We'll set this at 5,000. We'll come down and we'll set our mid-bass drivers, 80 Hertz. And we will set them at 400. And we'll do the same thing for our other mid-bass driver here. Now, there's some cool things that are set up with Tune that we can go through and help check us out. So real quick, we just look down through our pass bands here and we can see that each speaker kind of picks up where the last one left off, going down from our tweeters to our mid-bass drivers. And then if I wanted to set my crossover or low-pass filter here, I could do that too. Now, one thing, so maybe I'm taking some looks at my my FFT or RTA, and I want to change from 5,000 Hertz down to 4,500 Hertz, but I accidentally typed 45 Hertz in and hit enter. Oh, let me go back here. So I'm here, I accidentally typed 45 in. You'll notice that I get a red box right around the frequency there of what I typed in, and I also get a full mute of the amplifier. So there are some checks and balances that will keep you from making huge steps that will mute everything, so that way you don't... What's that? We would probably sell a lot more tweeters, but it's nice to have those checks. We can play the good guy card and say, look, we saved your tweeter, and we have our checks and balances in the software itself. So I said,
attention, Kevin, before you jump on, there's a couple of things. One, this is a great feature. To make it clear on how it functions, it only engages if you go from a very high frequency to a significantly lower frequency. So if you're at 40 Hertz and you went up to 200 Hertz, you're not going to hurt anything really at that point. So we don't mute and we don't call that attention, call any attention to that. This is only if you go from a high frequency to a significantly lower frequency in an effort to try to protect those tweeters from failing. And before I let you get back into the pattern there's been a couple of questions of why you only use one left EQ and one right EQ. Why didn't you use multiple EQs? But I have a feeling you're going to cover that and how we can expand later on, right?
I will, absolutely. So we're gonna put the gas pedal down here and get through. Like Steve said, if I just typed in 4,500 Hertz there and hit enter, I'd still be going. The change would be made. It's not that big of a deviation, and we would be okay. So moving on, we'll move on to our delay and polarity, our speaker distances. We can come in and type our speaker distances in here if we want to. So we've taken our precision delay finder and we've measured out all of our different speakers, and we can come in and type those numbers into this location if we want to. And I'll just type a couple in. The nice thing about it is you can see that the software has gone through and done the calculations from the farthest distance and delayed the closer speakers to us. So the software has gone through and done all of the hard work for us. We've just typed in those physical measurements that we've taken with our measuring device. Now, if you want to go through and add additional delay, you can. If you don't want to type in distances and you want to type in the milliseconds, say your program that you're using has figured that out for you, you can go through and type in your milliseconds in this panel here. So you have the options to do so. If you just want to use this for additional delay, you can, or if you want to use this for typing in your time of flight of speakers and milliseconds, whatever, you can do that also. And then this will just show you what the total delay is from the endpoint. Now, polarity, you can go in and flip polarity. If you've got something weird going on, you can check out the polarity and flip it very, very easily instead of going back to the speaker, disconnecting it, and flipping it at the speaker itself. We can come in and we can flip any of the speaker's polarity right from this screen here. And we have our all-pass filters coming down also. So you can go in, you can activate an all-pass filter and turn it on. You can select the frequency and you can select the Q of your all-pass filter at that point also. And then moving down one more box is our outputs. So we can come in and we can make some level trim adjustments. So once you set your input sensitivity, you're done, and then you come into your outputs. And again, we'll get in more in depth on how these are used whenever we get into the tuning process. So we can go in and we can make some adjustments here. Now the nice thing is this will actually link everything. So the little dot right next to level trim, you can select that and that will link everything. So if you need to get, or if you want to get a little bit more output and you're not seeing any red lights on the output side, you can come in there and you can move those up a little bit and they'll move up with one another. So they'll keep whatever the deviations between the different speakers, they'll maintain those and just move everything up with one another. The other one thing I want to show you guys is next to each of, what's that?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a really good point you brought up about the linking of the level trims. Those little dots that he did, when you click the one at the very, very top next to the word level trim, that selects all of them down the column so that any changes you make in one will scale all of them together so you can bring them all up to maximum output and get the full potential of the amplifier. Now, as you look at any one of the rows that go across, you'll see similar dots across there. For each of those columns that they're in, you can click individual dots or you can click all of them by clicking at the top. And that's a great way of making changes across multiple output channels at one point. Additionally, on the far, far left, underneath where the word crossover is, you'll see a large chain link with each grouped channel pairs. That's going to link almost all of the settings across that particular row of channels. The logic here is if you're setting crossovers, you'll probably set both left and right crossovers the same, at least to start. Similarly, if you're going to set the level, you're going to set them pretty much the same to start off with. What it doesn't link is anything to do with the timing. So delay and polarity and all pass filtering are not linked when you do that large chain link that Kevin's hovering over right now. So there's lots of ways of combining the actions for a grouping of channels, and you can individualize that or just do it as a group pair. Lots of flexibility.
And one last thing I want to show you guys is our panel. So this gives us just a visual representation of each high pass filter, low pass filter, and the electrical response and the way they interact with one another too. So you can take a look and see how those filters will interact with one another on an electrical response means. So you'll want to go through, you'll want to make your measurements with acoustical measurements to go through, but at least it gives you a nice visual representation of where your starting point's at. Now over here we can mute. What's that?
Pop that back up real quick, Kevin.
Yep.
One of my other favorite features, if you guys notice along the top of that window, there's a couple other icons you can click. The middle one will show you the group delay of all the channels, but my favorite right there is the output response, the last one. Because not only does it show you your filter or the passband on that channel, but it also shows any EQ adjustments. You can actually see electrically what is leaving the amplifier on each specific channel. And you can turn them off, you can have them all on. If you want to identify what's on the right mid-range only, you can look at specifically that channel to see the crossover filters that are used, any equalization, level differences. I think that's pretty cool.
It's really awesome. It's basically, it's the a frequency response representation of what's going out to the speakers on that channel. So that includes, like Rob said, all of those things in terms of high pass and low pass or band pass filtering. It includes the level and EQ as well. So all of that, basically that's what's going to that particular side of the vessel or vehicle. It's a great way of taking a look at what you've done.
All right, so now on our output side of things, we talked about our master mute that's going to mute the whole amplifier itself, but you can come in and mute individual speakers or leave one speaker unmuted there if you want to. So if we're just tuning our front right mid-range, we can go through and just have that specific speaker unmuted, and we can go through and unmute or mute any of these. So we can work with one speaker, we can work with a whole left side and do our tuning for our whole left side if we want to. And it makes it very, very simple for making those adjustments. And again, we'll get into the process a little bit more later. All right, so a couple more just real quick going to run through. We're going to actually go through and start a new project, and I'm going to show you what the setup tool does for us real quick. So now that we've gone through, we've set our crossovers, we've gone through, we've set all of our input naming devices, all of that. I don't want to save this current project. So now we're going to start a new project, and we're going to say this is Steve's Jeep. And it is a Jeep, and we're going to go through and we're going to put in our model and all of that through there. Now, in our notes, we want to make sure we put as detailed notes as possible. So we're going to say it's a VX 808I, and it is a 3-way C7. And we can put in what our subwoofer amplifier is. We can put in anything that we want to put in here. I suggest as much information as possible, even about the specific install, like write down where the RCAs are run in the vehicle, write down where the power wires are run in the vehicle, all of that information, where you grabbed your 12-volt triggered output at. That way, if another person needs to go in and do a check on this vehicle, they can just open the file and they can see exactly what is going on in the vehicle, and they don't have to do it. Or maybe the vehicle comes back 3 years or 4 years down the road, you completely forget where you installed everything. You can just pull up the file and take a look and know where everything is at. So it makes it nice and easy. So we're going to go ahead and hit next. I'm going to select 2-channel input, and I am going to select our same. I know, look at all of these options. And this is just for the 2-channel input. The other inputs have more options on there too. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to select 4-way left, right, mid-range tweeters and sub pre-out. And look what happens. It's come through. It's named all of our outputs for us. It's come through. It's taken all of those high-pass filters and is pretty close to, actually, it's dead on to what I put on there earlier. Not by design, but it's dead on to all of the filters that I've already put in. We have our speaker distances. It's set up our DRC for us, so we didn't have to check any boxes there. All it's asking me to do is go in and put some measurements in for my speaker distances, which I would do at this point in time, and then hit OK. So now
what's really cool about that is all those crossover points that Kevin mentioned, they're great starting points, and very often they're going to be really great ending points as well, but they're just starting points. You can change them very easily, as he demonstrated already. The fact that he saved all that time for typing out all those output names and all that other stuff and routing the signals and setting in all those filter frequencies, that's worth its time just in that. 2 clicks and it was all done, instead of all the typing and misspellings and all that other stuff. So it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, so now we have all of our outputs and all of that routed. Now, somebody asked earlier if I wanted to do more EQs. Can I do that? Yes, I can. I can come up and I can come up and I can grab my signal here, and I can come down and route my signal. I am just clicking. So, and then to delete, I'm right clicking and it gives me the option to delete. So I just left click on everything and it gives me the options. Now each speaker has its own individual EQ. So each individual driver has a 10-band parametric EQ. This is going to give you a lot of power at your fingertips to go through and do the tuning process. Now, if I did not bridge these,
you can drag those things as well. You don't actually have to click and delete. You can actually drag them over if you prefer to do that, just by clicking, holding, and then dragging to a new location. So it's your preference, whatever you want to do. And remember, thinking about virtual wires, what he did on the top with the input signals is he literally just tapped into those wires and ran new virtual wires to each one of those EQs. Think of them as like virtual Y adapters. You just pulled the same signal and routed it to multiple locations. And now, instead of having 10-band parametric on the left and 10-band on the right, you have 10-band on the left tweeter, 10-band on the right tweeter, 10-band on the left mid, 10-band on the right mid, and so on all the way down. So he literally, in a couple of clicks, went from having 20 bands of equalization to 80 bands of equalization to set up however you'd like.
Yeah. So now we went in, we saw that we still have these filters set up here. And like Steve said, these aren't set in stone. So I can come in here, I can type 4700 and hit enter and change any of these filters to whatever we want. If I want to come in and change it from 24 dB Linkwitz-Riley to 24 dB Butterworth, I can go through and do that. So we can make any adjustments even though we use the setup tool. We have the ability to go through and make the fine-tuning adjustments and change anything that has been set up already for us by that setup tool. So even if it's not an exact system, use the setup tool and just make the changes that you need to do. It's going to save you a lot of time down the road. Now, one of the last things I just want to show and end with here is networking. If you do have a hub in line, you can hit your networking tab and switch between all of the different amplifiers that would be laid up into your network there. So I can come in, I can add a virtual network, and you can see all of my multiple amplifiers are here. I can select this and be able to go through and select any of the amplifiers that are on that network device just by double clicking on said amplifier. Now,
it looked like you could pick MVI or VXI amplifiers. You can mix them on a network?
You can mix those on the hub. So on the hub, you can go through and you can mix those if you want to. So if you have an indoor and an outdoor type system on a vessel or in an RV or something like that, you can go through and mix those amplifiers without any issues. So it gives you some cool compatibility. Now, here is a nice full system mute. This will actually mute every amplifier on the network, which is nice, and then brings it back when we hit unmute. And then you can mute each individual amplifier. The ID button's nice. When you select the ID button, it'll actually flash the logo on the amplifier itself, so you can see which amplifier you are currently working with if you are unsure there. And then it gives you some cool little information here, your battery voltage, amplifier temperature, the power supply temperature, and all of that good stuff. What's connected to it, DRCs, etc. So you have a lot of cool information that you can view from this area on the network page. But the biggest thing is being able to swap between amplifiers easily and having a full master mute. So if you're back there tuning and somebody goes up and hits the receiver and turns something on full rail, you can hit the master mute and that will mute everything on the network, and you don't have to worry about whoever was abusing the receiver up front there. So it's a nice quick saving setup on there.
The individual amp mute icons is also extremely handy when you're tuning a vehicle. Like in my car, I have an amp for my front, an amp for my rear, and an amp for my subwoofer. So if I want to tune just the front stage, from the network tab, I can mute the rear speaker and the subwoofer, make my adjustments, turn them back on to listen to it to make sure that, you know, so that extra flexibility with just the mute controls also on each amplifier, in addition to the network-wide mute, is a very, very nice feature on the network tab.
One last thing I just want to leave with everybody here is our presets. I'm going to come in and select a new preset. You can hit the plus button here by clicking on it, or you can come in and duplicate a current preset. I normally always duplicate a preset because it's easier to start with something that's already routed. And then once I've duplicated, I'm going to come in and enable it and select a color. So maybe I've selected a preset for being able to do an optical audio capabilities. So I can come in and I can just click here and click on each one of these to route that. And then I'm going to go in and delete my analog routings. And now I have created a preset for optical input. So maybe I've got a handheld portable device and I want to be able to play that, but also tap into my OEM integration piece or my aftermarket receiver. So my red preset would be from my receiver, and then my blue preset would be from my optical device or optical input capabilities. Now I can create 6 different one of these, and they don't have to be just inputs. They could be like some different variations that we'll talk about in the next sessions in 201, but we can do 6 of these, and we also have our valet that we can enable up here also and set up our valet preset there too. So very powerful.
About the presets that's really powerful is you can change any of the virtual assets that you've configured. So any of the input, any of the signal routing, any of the number of EQs, any DRC assignments, any high pass or low pass filters, any polarity, all of those virtual assets can be changed by changing presets. The only thing you can't change is anything physical about the amplifiers. So if you have the outputs wired to certain speakers, the preset can't change the way they're wired. And that includes, as in this case, the bridging of those output signals. Once it's bridged, all the presets will be bridged. If it's not bridged, you can't have one bridged and another not bridged, because that would affect the actual wiring of the amplifier. But every single every single virtual asset that's configured in the amplifier can change with the change of a preset. That's amazingly powerful when you start to think about some of those solutions.
Yeah, even if you just wanted to mute rear speakers or, you know, turn the subs off or something like that, you could have a preset for that. We're not changing the physical wiring. We're just muting it through the virtual wiring in the amplifier or in the routing.
Just don't route signal to it, period. Right? So there's nothing to mute because it's gone. It's just not there anymore, which is fantastic.
So I'm using Tune for Mac on here. PC is extremely similar to it. So just keep that in mind when we did this walkthrough. It was all done on the Mac, but the PC is very similar to it. Tune Mobile is going to be similar to it too, but you are going to see some different variations when you're walking through the different steps and kind of where things are located. But if you kind of know one, you'll be able to feel the other one out fairly simply. So keep that in mind. We were on a Mac today, and I do appreciate your time. We've run a little bit over here, which I tried really hard to do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for you guys and come back to the chat so we can see everything. So if you guys have any questions, whether it's WebEx or on the Facebook Live, again, I appreciate the extra couple minutes that you guys have spent with us today, and hopefully everybody feels a little bit more comfortable. Tune is a free download, so feel free to download that and run through it just like I did today. I'm not connected to any amplifiers. Everything was done through just the software running on my computer. Like I said, I wasn't connected to any VXI or MVI that's in my office here.
If you had a keen eye, you may have noticed when Kevin closed Tune software, there was a pop-up with a yellow square. That's saying that when he was closing the software, hey, you haven't transferred anything you've done to this amplifier. Do you want to transfer it before the software closes? So there are a lot of extra steps that we've implemented to make sure that you transfer the project to the amplifier.
You know why we did all of that? It's not just because we're trying to save you guys a lot of anguish in this shop for accidents, but we know how installers are. You turn your back to go get a drink or something, the other installer comes and closes your laptop and you lose everything, or they're going to play a trick and unplug your computer while you're tuning just to see how bad it pisses you off. We know. We've been there. We have a guy named Bill that works in our R&D department. He's the guy that taught us all these. He knows all the pranks. So we know, and we're trying to protect you guys from things like that. So. Any other questions? I think we got most of the ones in WebEx. I think yes, Jonathan saying, so when you're done tuning, just hit cancel and take off running. Absolutely. If that's what makes you happy, yeah, you could do that.
Just make sure when you go through and manually label everything, left up top, right underneath.
I start from the top with the right channels, and then at the bottom with the left channels, and I go high to low from the bottom up, and low to high from the top down. And I do that just to piss off Manville. So it's interesting. Tune software, it's very, very flexible. There's lots of power inside of it. It can do almost anything. And sometimes when you have something that is so capable in terms of the options that we've given to people, it can be intimidating, which is why we made such a big deal about the setup tool. The setup tool is intended to take away a lot of the intimidation and get a user up and running very quickly with predetermined systems that we know are going to work out really, really well. They're not going to pose any problems. Yes, I know that you're going to wind up making changes when you go through the tuning process, but if you don't have time to go through all of that and you just want a quick setup, just grab that setup tool and you're good to go. It's not going to do anything goofy or strange. It's going to get you in the ballpark of a really good system right away. And it saves, for me, it just saves all the typing because, much like Kevin putting an extra E in Jeep there, I tend to do the same thing. I have all these typos and I spell left wrong. Yeah, I admit it. But it happens, and the setup tool is intended to eliminate a lot of those things. Kevin gave some really good insight of what to put in a note field when you're setting up a new project. I think of that as a note to my future self. If you guys are busy in a shop, or if you do a lot of things on various different cars, and you want to remind yourself in the future of what your brain was thinking when you set this system up, drop it in the notes field. I don't know if there's an actual limit. I've never hit the limit, but I guess there's got to be some kind of limit of what we can put in there. But you could put a short novel in there explaining to your future self of what you were doing with this system. Of course, things like Kevin showed, what amplifiers were routed to what speakers and what box, and what the intent of the system was. Or if you're a shop and you're doing this for customers, customer listens to a lot of classic rock music, things like that. Little notes to your future self of what may have led to some of the design choices or the system choices. Just drop it in there. It's an easy thing to do. And as Kevin kind of went through some of the different mechanisms of rerouting signal and how to change some of those things, as you click around in the free software that runs in demo mode without restriction, pause for dramatic effect, free software that runs in demo mode without any restrictions, you can learn this software pretty much in your downtime, if you have any. If not, at night, you're sitting there bored watching a TV show or something, you can just click through and see what happens. You're not gonna hurt anything. It's all free, so no big deal. Just this is part of what we do, so learn it. It's once you learn it, it's pretty easy to get the hang of, and you start realizing some of the power and flexibility that we built into it, in addition to all those safety precautions that Kevin covered for us. So.
When I'm doing my own install, I actually sit in my office and I lay everything out in the software itself, and then I go down to the vehicle and do all of the hard wiring and all of that secondary. So I actually lay out my entire system in the software, save it, get everything kind of ready to go without even being plugged into the amplifier. And then when I'm ready to go and do the actual tuning process, then I'll plug in, load everything on. Everything's already created. All my starting points are good, and I am ready to go.
That's an excellent thing to do, and that's where the naming convention really pays dividends. Because when you look at the wires that come out of the amplifier, they're labeled like a normal set of wires would be. The left is the normal left colors, the right is the normal right colors. So when you go to make those connections in the vehicle, it all makes sense when you follow the naming convention that Kevin outlined for us. So what he does, I think, is brilliant. You do it in the comfort of a shop or on your couch or wherever. You just set up your whole system and you play around with it and go, oh, wait, maybe I'll do this instead. You do all of that, and then you just make your hard connections when you get to the vehicle itself. You can do all this before you even own an amplifier. It's great.
One thing I didn't mention in it when we were talking about limitations came up is there is a back button. You can go back, and there is a limitation on the back button of 100 times. So if you messed something up 99 clicks prior, you could back up 100 times and be able to get.
That's not enough. You have the saved backups that by default is 3 deep every 5 minutes. So if 100 layers of undo and 15 minutes of automatic saves isn't enough, We really need to talk about process, okay?
You need more practice in demo mode.
Yeah, that back feature for me is one of my favorites because when you play around with a parametric EQ, you can really easily get lost because you have the ability to change the center frequency, the boost, the cut, the Q. So if you start moving stuff around and doing stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, that doesn't sound as good. Well, how do you undo all of this weird parametric stuff you're doing? That back key has helped me a couple of times when I started doing a little too much with that EQ.
Without a doubt. No, that's great. It's a really good point because you start chasing things, you think you're making a difference, and ultimately you're not. And in the EQ, you have the ability of engaging or disengaging an individual filter. So if you're working in a particular area, you can turn that filter in that area on or off as you're going through it. And if you find that it sounds better off, you can undo all of that or literally just type in new values to a zero value and you're back to where you were. But you're right, Rob, 100%. There's lots of flexibility and power in the ability to undo and honestly to redo as well. If you undo it, you said, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to go back. You can go back. Another feature sort of related to that has to do with the presets that Kevin was covering. You had the ability to save as, right? So if you make changes on a given preset, you can save it as a new preset from that point, which is kind of neat. It's a very powerful feature when you start considering the actual tuning process. You go down a path and you get it to sound a certain way. You could save that as driver seat tune, and the preset you're on goes back to what it normally was, or can go back to what it normally was, and you've already captured your work in another preset.
Yeah, my last vehicle, I had 3 drivers seat tune presets, just making some adjustments here and there and figuring it out.
I just love that. I remember when Steve and I were traveling before, when we had initially kind of started to work on fix and tweak and just talking to installers, like, you know, about what their likes and dislikes were about some of the software packages on the market. And some of the complaints, seeing us implement that into the initial design of Tune for me is really cool, like the auto save, the setup tool, because those were some of the complaints, you know. Not to talk about the software, everyone great software packages out there, but you know, oh, it takes forever to set up because I'm not a great typer and it's a complex system. I mean, it could be a couple minutes if you're very proficient with the computer and typing. It could be 20, 30 minutes. And, you know, we saw what it took Kevin today. Now, granted, it was a little slower because, you know, he was explaining and talking. But, you know, that setup tool for me, I mean, that's a game changer. Click, click, and you're tuning with a system that we know is safe to work with. That's awesome. And then the auto save, you know, the laptop battery dies. There's no more having to start all over from scratch if you didn't save it throughout the process. And we have the backups, not just on the software side, but you got to remember, everything's stored on the amplifier temporarily until power cycled if you don't hit the transfer icon. So even if you lose your computer, as long as that amp is still powered up, all of your work is still temporarily saved on the amplifier as well. You just need to reconnect to it, load that project, and you can pick up where you left off, which is really cool. It looks like we might have lost Steve. I see a bandwidth icon there. So we'll hang out for a couple more minutes just to see if there's any more questions that come through. And if not, we do have another session. Are we on at 1 p.m. Eastern today, Kevin?
1, yeah.
So at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 Pacific, we have a class on M6 and M3 speakers. So
M7.
Oh, and of course, yeah, can't forget that big M7 IB12. So, of course, we hope to see you guys there as we get into deeper into the Marine speaker family than we did in the Marine overview training last week. So hopefully we'll see you guys there for that. And I don't see any WebEx questions coming in. We'll wait another minute or so just to make sure nothing comes in on Facebook. And we'll let you guys go. Hope to see you in 2 hours or so. It's so much quieter when Steve's not on. How funny that is.
Well, now we can talk.
Except he's probably watching us on Facebook.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
All right. Well, I don't see anything coming through on Facebook, so we're going to call it, guys. Thanks for joining us. Again, if any other questions that come up with Tune software, please visit our help center. Click on support on jlaudio.com. Go to the Tune applications section, and you'll find a bunch of articles on Tune software for VXI and MVI products, tweak and fix products as well. So make sure to check those out if you have any other questions or further support. And you can always reach out to our technical support team. They live, breathe, love Tune software, so they can definitely help you out with anything else as well. So with that, I'm going to kill it. Thanks
everybody for your time today. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us and walking through the software.